just to get things started, to introduce myself, my name is Shruti Ashokan, and I'm the program coordinator here at the Office of Professional Learning at the Faculty of Education at UBC. I support all of our non-credit programming, and I'm happy to assist with all those of you who are interested in registering for this program and other professional learning opportunities that we have. The primary person today who is going to be doing this presentation is Yvonne Dodiak, who is the instructor for the AI Micro-Credntial and also a very integral part of the UBC Faculty of Education. She's got tremendous experience and works with us on many different programs. And I'll let Yvonne take it from here.
Thank you, Shruti. I just want to start by acknowledging that I'm joining from the traditional unceded territories of the Senchotin and Hulkaminam speaking Coast Salish peoples. On an island, settlers took it upon themselves to name Salt Spring just over a century ago. I'd like to acknowledge that the lands, water, sky, living and non-living relations on these territories have been stewarded and inhabited by Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. As Shruti said, my name is Yvonne Dodiak and I'm the instructor. I was also the content developer and supported course design for this course. I worked alongside Dr. Guofang Li in the Department of Language and Literacy in the Faculty of Education to develop this course for educators. So really excited that you've taken an interest and are either joining us live or are going to watch the video later. My background, you can read my bio on the website, but I was a K-12 teacher for just over 20 years in the Surrey School District. I did my master's in educational technology at UBC in about 2010, I believe. And for the past 10 years or so prior to leaving UBC and moving to Salt Spring Island, I was the learning design manager in teacher education, and I supported faculty and teacher candidates with designing interactive and effective learning experiences with digital technologies and without digital technologies. So happy to answer any questions around my background and interests. It was really exciting to help develop this course, and I can speak to a little bit more about that later. And as the instructor in the course, I just want to speak to this question. We will be doing within the course, once folks are registered, we'll be doing some sort of prior knowledge, activating prior knowledge and pre-assessments to try to get a sense of where folks are at and what their specific interests are with respect to AI and digital literacies. It's really important for us as we move forward with the course to have a sense of who might be interested. So getting this information today just kind of gives us a little bit of information that way, and also helps me perhaps address specific questions. Again, knowing that many folks are watching the recording, we will try to be fairly broad with responses. So as part of designing the course, I have done and continue to do as deep a dive as I possibly can into AI and the landscape in education worldwide. This is a course that's being offered not just to BC, British Columbia, or Canadian context, but is being offered internationally. And we know that there are a number of differences, but there are also a lot of connections between what's happening here in British Columbia and what's happening around the world with respect to AI literacies for teachers, for educators. I think one of the things that's important to me is when UNESCO came out with their guidance in 2024, there's a real focus on the idea of using AI ethically and educators helping to protect their students. So thinking about our data privacy, thinking about ethical issues, and using AI in pedagogically sound ways. So preparing learners to engage critically with technologies is a big part of what we would like to do within the course. But first looking at ourselves as teachers and preparing ourselves so that we can then prepare our students. Technology, I think, ought to complement, not replace human insight. So this idea of a human-centered approach, we want to focus on relationships and classroom dialogue. When we're in a face-to-face classroom, when we're in a synchronous session, we want to prioritize communication between the folks within the room. So thinking about ways that learning ensures AI remains a tool that supports rather than substitutes that emotional, social and ethical dimension. And as I'm sure you know, trends are changing, and this is a landscape that isn't just kind of a one and done, which is one of the reasons that I imagined the course as an inquiry-based approach as opposed to a more teacher-led approach. While there will be some guided practice and information provided, the real focus of the course is on case-based inquiry and learning within a community of educators. So I see the course as taking a structured literacy approach as opposed to a strictly balanced literacy approach for those literacy educators in the room or watching. Given the likely disparity in understandings and starting points, we'll engage in some informal pre-assessment, and a lot of choice will be provided, both in synchronous activities and especially in asynchronous activities. So I've built in some choice boards of learning activities for folks to participate in, acknowledging that what might be beneficial for one student within a group may not be beneficial for everyone within a group. So trying to build that in so that the course isn't dated. And I did the research and the design in this course over the past year and a half, and will be doing some refresh on some of the research and some of the literature within the course prior to the offering in the fall as well. It's a bit of a challenge, but fun. So who the course is for, I mean, if you're here, hopefully it's for you. I think educators across various contexts, in particular K-12 educators, but I've worked a lot with teacher librarians, I've worked a lot with school district administrators. I think anyone within that education adjacent role where AI is impacting what you're doing, where you're working with learners who are experimenting with AI, whether perhaps you as an educator yourself are looking at ways to incorporate AI within your planning, within your teaching, then I would say it's for you.
So I'd like to take this moment here to address a question we received from a couple of individuals. It was mostly just asking about what the cost of the program is. So I'll speak to that a little bit. So as you can see here, the program fee is $1,150 plus taxes, which brings it to about $1,200. And just to give you a sense of, we had some questions about the price point. So the primary difference is that this is a UBC Faculty of Education micro-credential. And compared to a lot of other professional learning offerings, which are shorter programs, they're typically maybe, like a 2-hour workshop or a series of sessions that span like an hour or two every alternate week. What sets apart a micro-credential is that it is a significantly more in-depth and rigorous program. It provides you with a greater deal of exposure and engagement. And in engaging both with your learning community, the other individuals participating in the program, but also with Yvonne herself, the true value you're going to be getting is the shared learning experience, but more critically, the assessment and feedback on your learning that is going to be provided, as opposed to other workshops where you might show up, listen to a session or something like a webinar, where it's more passive. The engagement here and what we can see from the modality. So you can see we have 5 synchronous meetings and of 2 hours each, which is 10 hours. But the overall micro-credential program, the expectation is approximately 50 hours of engagement between the synchronous meetings, asynchronous materials, the projects and assignments that you'll be working on, and all of the real-time learning and feedback that you're going to receive. There's a great deal of material. There's very valuable knowledge sharing that will take place. And we hope that gives you a sense of understanding as to the way the program is structured, the schedule, the hours it covers, and why it is price point it's at. If you have any further questions about program fees, you can always save it for the Q&A at the end, but you can also reach out to us via email if you have any specific questions related to your situation.
Over the 10 weeks, as you engage in an inquiry, you'll have other ways that you're staying connected with one another asynchronously, but you will be expected to find time where you can meet that's convenient to you. You'll be involved in supporting putting together those learning groups, and so we'll look at various contextual factors to support the learning groups, both teaching areas, educational contexts, but also we can have some look at time zones to support that. I'm currently teaching a course with international educators coming from all over the world. I've got one in Australia, I've got another in mainland China, a number here, and a number in South America. And so they also have these learning group meetings, and we've worked hard to make sure that they can happen at times that are appropriate and convenient to each of the members of the group. So this idea of shared meaning making, I think, is really important to me. There will be a lot of sort of provocation and hands-on activity prior to conversations that you'll have with one another. So taking a socio-constructivist approach to an extent. That said, I did mention earlier a structured literacy approach. So in the first module, there will be a fair bit of hands-on learning where we you're delivered a little bit of information and some background to get you started. But then as we move through the course, there will be more of a gradual release into those learning groups, which I will also occasionally join individual learning groups, and will definitely be available to consult with those groups. We've designed a case study specifically for the course that the learning groups will investigate, and each learning group will select an issue of interest to them within the case study to then engage in some inquiry and research. So the learning experience, I think we've chatted a wee bit about that already, but that idea of co-creating your understanding of course concepts is really essential. I think we're in an area where there are no true experts still. Obviously, there are folks who have expertise in aspects of AI, and if there's any computer scientists in the group, you definitely, hats off. I do acknowledge and recognize the deep expertise, but the idea here for educators is to come together to gain understanding from one another, and as well as benefit from the research that I've done to put together the course. We've built into the course video interviews and objects and media with researchers from across British Columbia and educators as well who are engaging in AI use for themselves as teachers with their students. And we captured some really interesting video that is a part of this course as well that I think you'll enjoy seeing. So this information is all on the website, and you're welcome to go there and have a look if there's any specific questions around the schedule. We did have one question came in early in the registration for this session, and that was, if I miss a synchronous session, will I be able to catch up with a recording? I'm going to give a qualified yes to that, but I would say when you're registering, to scan ahead, see the schedule of dates, and try to ensure you're available on those dates, because they won't be webinars. This won't just be some sort of 2-hour stand and deliver. This will be actively engaging with one another. As I said at the very beginning, using the time that we have together in ways that are essential together. Asynchronous time can be used for all kinds of watching videos and listening to people talking. That's not what our time together will be used for. So it's not a lecture-based course. There will be some knowledge sharing and providing, but the real driver within the course will be the interaction. So trying to ensure that you are available for that, I think is essential to your own understandings. And I think with the micro-credential, participation is also a big part of the pass-fail aspect of a micro-credential. So being there, barring emergencies, obviously, and just being proactive if you are going to be away, so that maybe some alternative activity could be provided. But yeah, so short answer was yes, but longer answer is try to be there. So schedule, again, this is on the website. An example in weeks 1 to 3. What is AI and GenAI? We've interviewed a number of researchers from across UBC who have deep engagement in AI from different contexts, and those videos will be incorporated into weeks 1 through 3. While you explore GenAI for yourself and in your groups, you will have the opportunity to learn from some experts about ways that they're engaging with AI and what they've learned. We'll also have some hands-on sessions within our synchronous classes, some activities that could be modeling for the sorts of things you might do with your own students. So us building our knowledge as educators, but maybe taking away a strategy or an approach that would be appropriate for a classroom session of your own. And as we get deeper into the course, we go deeper into ethics and bias within GenAI. So, this sense that we really need to deeply develop our literacies as educators in order to support our students. So this is hands-on, but it's not a course about how to use AI specifically. We will talk about how to use AI. We will use AI for different purposes, intentional reasons within the course. But we're really trying to dig into what's the most important in our own context with respect to AI literacy. So in the final weeks, sorry, if you could back up just one, Shruti. In the final weeks, we'll really focus on a case study and engaging in some collaborative inquiry. Obviously, this is just a very brief inquiry. This isn't, there isn't a big project that comes out of it at the end. Instead, you're trying to gain understandings within your group, and then you'll present to the larger group about what you've learned in a way to sort of share, reflect, and celebrate the learning that's happened. Learning outcomes, again, if there's any specific questions, those are on the website. You see this idea of understanding linguistic, racial confirmation, and other forms of bias, and learning how to minimize its impact on learners. I would also say learning how to explore that with your learners. We had some questions on registration about relevance to a primary teacher, for example. There are approaches advocated in various frameworks that we'll look at around how you engage with AI with young learners. Do you engage with AI with young learners? So thinking about that in terms of K through 12 and beyond. So we spoke already to the micro-credential time commitment, approximately 50 hours. It could go over 50 hours for you, depending on how engaged you get in your inquiry. But we also understand that many of the folks taking the course will be practicing teachers and won't expect outside of that in order to meet the expectations of the course. So about 5 hours a week over the 10 weeks. So some of those weeks will meet for 2 hours, a little bit more asynchronous engagement. So you do see that synchronous class sessions, you are expected to attend and actively participate. So that speaks again to the question around, do I need to attend all the sessions? This is beyond a workshop. This is a micro-credential through UBC, and we do have standards that we have to meet. That said, I am an inclusive educator and really work to proactively meet with students if they're having difficulty or need to shift their focus for a week or two. So there's lots of ways that we can move through this and help people find success in the program. So 3 sort of mini assignments that build towards each other. So looking in the first module at a very practical, applying your understanding that we gain within the course in the first module by adapting a lesson, an artifact, an assessment, a tool, something relevant to your context. We'll also hear from an educator who's been doing a lot of that adaptation themselves to give you some ideas of how you might go about doing that. Module 2, a critical reflection on the ethical dimensions and other aspects of critical literacies. And again, hearing from educators, and actually in that module, also hearing from students about their exploration with AI. And then the cross-pollination presentation, or the main inquiry that is worked around the case study, is part of module 3. Sure. So I'll look at the first question, managing technology inside the classroom. I was a K-4 teacher for a good chunk of my career in the Surrey School District in BC, one of the fastest growing school districts. And while I taught K-8, my time with primary learners did involve managing digital technologies inside the classroom. So this is the kind of conversation that we can have within the course. And I think with AI in particular, there are a number of provisos when it comes to the use of AI with under 13. So a number of jurisdictions are now setting age limits for the actual use of AI. And I think that's really important. We'll look into why that is, and also look into, your specific context, I guess, when it comes to the use of AI. So perhaps as a primary teacher, you're helping to prepare students by helping them understand pattern and algorithm, as opposed to actually engaging with a bot of some sort. But maybe as a teacher, you're using AI in ways to support the development of materials for your students. And maybe in that, you're having conversations, active conversations, or sharing stories with your students, so that they understand where these materials are coming from, and it's not just kind of a black box to them. So I think that helps to answer that question without getting into the details of how you're going to manage technology within your classroom. But that is the kind of thing that we can look at within the course for sure. I could see an inquiry being around that for a group of primary educators. I already spoke to missing a session, a chance to view it asynchronously. The answer to that is yes, probably. How much value there will be in seeing a recording will depend on what's happening within that particular session. If it's focused around group engagement and learning groups, I don't tend to record learners within the course engaging in conversation. I find that a bit intrusive, but if it is a presentation that I'm doing, or if we have permission from other learners within the course to record, then of course we will. But trying to ensure that you're actually available for each of the days that we'll be meeting. Those won't change. So those synchronous sessions are in a calendar, and scanning those ahead. Someone else asked about the broader discussion about AI. I'd like to know if this course is hands-on and meaningful for early primary educators. Again, as someone with a background in early primary education, I would say yes. It will incorporate, I wouldn't necessarily say broader discussion about AI, but critical conversation about developing literacies around AI, I think is a big part of what we'll do, but we'll do that in a way that's contextualized and meaningful by engaging in intentional practice. So because of the environmental significance and because of all of the other issues around AI, I personally don't advocate for unintentional practice. So I think that's, we will engage in practice, we will use tools, we will talk about tools and share ideas, but all of that will be within the context of building our literacies. And literacies includes how to, but it's not the only piece of literacy that we're interested in for the course. How many students are you hoping to work with in this course? Is there a minimum or maximum number of students? That's a great question for Shruti. Usually that comes down to budget, and that's not really my area. And just so you know, that $1,000 doesn't all come to me. UBC doesn't pay that well. But, I think there are some minimums for budgetary reasons, aren't there, Shruti?
We do typically have a minimum registration requirement for a program to run. Um, it's rare that it's not met. And I would say for micro-credentials such as this, we're probably looking at anywhere between maybe like not less than 10 to 12 individuals, but it's also unlikely to be, this is not like we said, like workshops or webinars where it's going to be like 40, 50 participants,
Mm-mm.
given the depth of engagement. Yvonne, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking on average it would be maybe 20 to 30 people engaged in this
That sounds great to me. I
on
know that
the higher side,
I
but
know UBC typically has a max. So in other courses that I'm teaching online at UBC for professional learning, the maximum number of students that I can have in a course is about 35 or 36, to ensure that I'm able to focus on all of the learners. So we don't have classes of 100. So I would assume that's the case for something like the micro-credential. I'd be thrilled with 25.
yeah, it looks,
Any other questions?
I think one more came in about
Action research in my
mhm.
classroom because we're considering not using any tech for the first term next school year. Okay, great question. And, with all of the limitations being put in various jurisdictions around bring your own device and around digital tool access and use in classrooms, this isn't an action research project. So an inquiry might contain an aspect of action research, but in this case, we're talking about a fairly short-term inquiry and will typically involve engaging with literature, engaging in conversations, maybe some observations in your context, but that wouldn't have to be the case in order to participate. So what you'll be trying in the course, it would be wonderful that you can try those things in the classroom, which is where the learning groups and the context within the learning groups comes into play. So, perhaps there's a learning group where folks are all in a place where they're being asked to not use technology for the first term next school year, for example. I can't really predict until we know who's in the course, but I think that's not a barrier to participation because this is not an action research project. Within the phases of the inquiry that we'll be looking at, we'll be looking at, designing an inquiry around a problem or an issue that you identify within a case study, and then investigating your questions around that inquiry. We won't get to the implementation phase specifically within the period of the course. More, you might make a plan or set some goals for how you would incorporate what you're learning. Informally, you're welcome to always incorporate what you're learning, but that would be up to the individual. Does that help answer that question? I know it speaks around it a wee bit, but I'm happy to get more specific. Oh, did I speak to that one? Will the use of AI and its practical application creating resources be considered or included? So as you saw from the assignments, the very first assignment in module 1 is around practical application and creating resources or recreating resources. So maybe looking at what you already have and doing some adaptation. So I've gathered some excellent resources and media around assessment, for example, and the impacts of assessment across contexts with AI. And I think that's a big part of the conversation that we as a group will be having is how do we address or help to mitigate the use of AI within classrooms. I don't think there's such a thing as an AI proof assessment or lesson, but there are certainly mitigation efforts and measures that we can look at. And again, those resources that you create would be context specific. Would it be okay if I enroll even though I'm an education admin and not a teacher? An educator is an educator, whether you're a school principal, vice principal, teacher, librarian, I would say definitely yes. It's more than okay to enroll. I think our leads within our schools, can be administrators. Our leads might be lead teachers. And correct me if I'm wrong, Shruti, I believe there are opportunities for group registration. So if you had a group of teachers or group of admin from your school district that were interested in taking the course, you can contact the folks at the Office of Professional Learning at UBC and talk about some opportunities to enroll as a group. And then you could actually participate in a learning group, either just yourselves or with another few folks, depending on the size of your group and your interests.
Yeah, just to pitch in on that, that's absolutely right. We always welcome like groups, as Yvonne mentioned, either within like the same school, institution, or even if you have, if you're connected with educators or colleagues from outside of your organization, we welcome inquiries for group registrations, and we're always happy to facilitate more collaborative learning. So feel free to reach out to us to ask about that. You can email us or give us a call. The contact information will be there at the end of this presentation and can also be found on our website.
And it's interesting to note, I've done some professional development sessions with both admin, with teacher librarians, and with teachers. And I find that many of the things that folks are grappling with are very similar across the board. So I think there's definitely value in connecting as an admin with classroom teachers as well from outside of your context, just to see what they're kind of working with and thinking about. Oh, I see one more. Is it the first time this course is offered? What certainty is there about a 2027 offering? Are you exploring offering the course in the spring at some point? So I can answer the first part of that question. Yes, it is the first time the course is offered. And as far as certainty about 2027, Shruti?
We don't typically get into the next year's offering until the current one is underway. So at this time, I can't give any concrete information on 2027 programming. That being said, we always do plan a year in advance. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to us via email. But at this moment, the schedule, the confirmed programming being offered is for 2026. But the hope and the plan is to offer this again. It might be in a slightly different iteration, I would say, Yvonne, depending on what the educational environment is and what the needs of educators are. That is, I'm not certain about that, or if you want to say
Yeah,
anything about that.
thanks, Shruti. One of the reasons that, as I think I mentioned earlier, that the course is inquiry based is it allows the course to be, I would say, adaptable and flexible to the needs. I would need to and would go through and do a content update and a new literature review. For example, I've put together a supplemental reading list to support inquiry that would be updated before any offering, including the offering this fall. And I'm available in March, Shruti. So I'm curious if folks would find, the timing. We tried to go with October offering as opposed to September, knowing as a teacher, I didn't want to engage in a whole ton of outside of school Pro D in September. Although we do recognize that the fall can just in general be a fairly busy time. So yeah, if you have an interest in a spring offering, I would reach out to the Office of Professional Learning with the email address that you see there, I think. Contact us, yes, and let them know. And if you are interested in the fall, I hope I get an opportunity to meet you on Zoom in October.
And we're more than happy to answer questions any of you might have about the registration process, the form itself. So the email over there, pd.opl@ubc.ca, is where we can be reached for this program. And as adding to what Ivan said, we're always looking to offer our programming in formats and at times of the year that are best suited for educators. So if your school, your institute, yourself, if there's something specific you're looking for or hope to see, email us about that as well. We're happy to receive these type of queries, and it informs our programming. We do factor that in.
Thanks everyone for joining us.